welcome. Thanks for joining us. Adrian and I are, let's see if I can switch. Yeah, wave your hand, Adrian. Yeah, there he is, all the way up in the front. Those of you who haven't been in the church basement for a while, we had about 30 folks join us for this morning's meeting, this what we're calling the public reveal of the building project. Very happy that you folks can join us in this way today. If you're not already, if you put yourself on mute just so we don't get the background noise, that would be super. And then we will try to answer questions as they come up. If you would just use the chat feature, which is on my iPad, there's 3 little dots up in the upper right-hand column. If I press on those, one of those options is chat. And you can send a message to everyone or just Adrian. That'd be super. Okay. Any questions before we get started?
Really quick, if you can't hear, post something. I see Janine's having some issues hearing. If anybody else can't, just let us know if for some reason you can't hear what's going on.
Okay. Well, friends, what you're about to see is, well, it's almost a couple of years in the making. Conversations that started about First Lutheran's campus, about it being, how do we make it more welcoming? How do we make it more handicap accessible? How do we do lots of different things? And then we have, the roof issue that we've gone through. And so the ELCA from day one has guided us in this process of, okay, here are the next steps that you should think about. And they've just got a roadmap for us, which has been super, super helpful because, obviously none of us have done this before. So started with this stabilization team. Now the building task force took over. Janice Crabble, Mary Hart, Kendra Van Sloten, Carrie Nimrod, Adrian and myself, Paul Berland, and Greg McGowan. Did I miss anybody, Adrian? I don't think so. Along with our friends at CUNY Architect over in Wisconsin, and have put together what you're about to see here. It is, at the end of the day, what we feel like is the best compromise of all of the things that this congregation said were important to them. But specifically, there were 4 themes that we were working with: social ministry, music and worship, youth and family, and hospitality. So it's easy to look at a different part of our campus and say, well, that's important to me. And so I think, that's what we should do with this building. We should, make youth and family, drive some dollars towards that end and create more space for them. Or I'm really interested more in social ministry and so think food pantry or free clinic or those kinds of things. No, I'm more interested in worship and music. This group, who is not all like-minded with this, with all of the ideas that we went through, has come up with, again, what we're going to show you here is our compromise. What I'm going to say off the bat is that this really is designed to show you big picture types of things spatially. Don't get too wrapped up in the aesthetics. In other words, if you see a paint color that you don't like, or if you see something that just doesn't look quite right, those are the details that some group down the road will get to, assuming this project goes as planned. You're going to see a sanctuary, friends, that most of us have been looking at on these designs for some time now, but for almost all of you are going to see it for the first time and have some bit of anxiety about it. Trust me, because it looks different. So, long story short, Friends, the idea here, and Adrian, why don't you take us to the first slide? The idea here is that your sanctuary remains, the exterior of the sanctuary looks the exact same. You know, that historic looking red door you see there on the front steps, stained glass, those kinds of things look the same from the outside as they do today. The goal is going to be to fortify the sanctuary inside. Take away the columns, take away the wires, and protect the sanctuary space for the next 100 years plus, not the temporary stabilization that we have now. In order to do that, if you think of that roof structure of the sanctuary being peaked, right, or gabled, there's that wood framed right now, and we've got architect on Zoom here with us today as well, John Wellenkamp. John, feel free to jump in anytime. But we've got to reinforce this thing with steel. So what you're going to see in this rendering is that our interior ceiling comes down to flat to hide all of the steel reinforcements that are being proposed. Okay, so it looks the same from the outside. From the inside, under this design, it would look much, much different than it does today. And for some people, that's invigorating. And for other folks, that's going to be upsetting or anxiety causing. And it's completely understandable. What we're here to do today is just show you where we've come, ask for you to consider these things and pray about them, and provide us with some feedback, okay? What you're seeing on the left-hand side of your screen is a mostly new education and office wing. Some of you may know, but others may not. There are currently 7 different floors inside of our church campus. I said 3 earlier this morning, but I think it's only 2 are accessible by elevator, or by, if you're in a wheelchair, for example. 2 of those 7 are accessible to you. The goal, or what the product that you're going to be looking at today, takes that down to 3. All of which are accessible by elevator. So our intention, our hope was that we could use as much of the existing facilities as we possibly could. Try to be good stewards of what's been given to us. But every time we tried to make use of the existing educational office space the way it is now, there were deficiencies in that caused us to kind of rethink and try to, go a different route. And so by and large, that space is mostly brand new. So what you're seeing there from Broadway Street, obviously, under the peak, is and I'm talking about the new portion now, right to the left of the sanctuary, is the entrance to the narthex area. You're seeing the parking lot up on the far left side. Adrian, maybe we go to the next. This is the view from the parking lot. Okay. Existing parking lot remains relatively unchanged, but the entrance that you're seeing here, thinking about driving up, dropping off, is that elevation level is the same as the floor of the sanctuary. So you're talking about a 0-step up or down entrance from the parking lot directly into the floor of your sanctuary, which is really, really neat. So you see on the right-hand side, a parent and child walking along the one entrance into the narthex area. And then in the middle of your screen, you see that tall covered area. That would be a main entrance as well. You can see the steeple in the background, again, unchanged. I believe what we've got next is a virtual fly-through. Is that correct, Adrian? Yeah. So enjoy the next couple of minutes. What you're not seeing on those rooftops is our solar array, which would absolutely be there. Actually, a lot of south-facing roof line provides ability to expand our solar capacity if we chose to do so. The historic looking sanctuary again remains the same from the exterior. That back wall of the office wing, that north wall, as it were, you're looking at currently on the right-hand side of your screen, that remains the same, as does the west-facing wall of the office wing. Everything else is, for the most part, new. Now we're going to go through into the narthex area. A gathering space for both before and after. You see, it's populated with so high vaulted ceilings. What you're seeing now entering the sanctuary from the rear, you'll notice that we have, in this case, orientated the sanctuary 90 degrees. You see the roof design is now flat and lower than it currently is. You see the balcony has been moved to the west part of the sanctuary, and the organ is moved to the floor where it was originally. You're not seeing things like the altar or any of those things in here because, again, that'll be up to a whole other group of folks to decide, you know, how those things, where the placements are and that kind of thing. So just think spatially now. There's a kitchenette in this area. This is where we'll host coffee. You have the nursery on the right, the fireside room on the left, a smaller worship space, office suite on your right, and library on the left here. The elevator is in this space right here, right behind you as you're walking up the stairs. Walking up to the education wing now. So you can see the elevator entrance right there, right in front of you. So here you're thinking about dropping off your kids or your grandkids for Sunday school or kids ministries. What you're seeing here, just briefly, right, are classrooms and multi-purpose rooms for the younger kids area. Of course, 2 sets of bathrooms. And then this gives us access to the balcony. And you can see the narthex on your right, vaulted ceilings in that space. The question's been asked, you know, why can't we keep the more traditional looking sanctuary? And certainly, again, this is not to be, don't be confused by the aesthetics of what you're seeing here. It could very well be much, much different than what you're seeing. But what I want you to visualize here, and I think this helps, is bringing down that roof line to more of a flat vaulted, not vaulted ceiling. Moving the organ down onto the floor does a couple of things. It certainly keeps Lindsay or whomever is playing the organ from having to run up and down the stairs, piano to organ. It also allows an organist to also conduct the choir on the floor. I spoke with Greg Peterson about this plan, and he had very, very, very nice things to say. The stained glass windows, we utilize those as much as we possibly can on the east side. So those aren't new windows you're looking at. They just haven't been computerized showing the stained glass. Again, altar, that's a question mark that we're just that's not the point that we're at right now, is talking about design interior. This is just big picture. Okay. Adrian, is that the end of the video? Okay. So what we're taking you to now is the floor plan. As you can see, where Adrian's pointer is there on the left-hand side is the entrance from the parking lot into that breezeway. And so the elevator to your right as you walk in, or the stairs up or down to your left. As you walk into the office suite that is controlled by our office person, and access to pastors and staff in offices beyond that space. There's workspace there, there's break room space there. Back into the hallway, there's a reduced fireside room for smaller private services. If you can see that towards the bottom middle of your page. A nursery in blue on your left-hand side as you're walking down that hallway, but into the larger narthex area. Again, what you're seeing in the middle above the narthex is a kitchenette. So this isn't a fully functioning kitchen. It just, allows us to serve coffee and treats out of there between services. According to the ELC, one of the biggest roadblocks to get people from service to coffee hour is that coffee hour, much like our space is now, is not in between where they worship and where they park. And so this specifically, is appealing toward that end. You see in orange on the opposite side of the hallway from the kitchen are 2 sets of bathrooms, accessible with no steps to participants in the sanctuary or the main floor. The music area in blue to the north side of the sanctuary, you're seeing all the music storage, music offices, choir room there as well, with direct access to the sanctuary from the choir room. The front door of the existing sanctuary remains there. The steps, just to give it its historic look, of course. The stairs remain on both sides of that area. Don't think that that entrance will be used often, but for things like fire code, that type of thing, it remains. Okay. Adrian, next slide. What you're seeing now is the basement. So the shaded area to the middle and left-hand side of your screen is the new excavated area. It's underneath the new wing, proposed new wing. What you're seeing in pink on the right-hand side, or orange, is the existing fellowship hall and existing kitchen. The kitchen gets a little workaround just to make it flow a little bit better, but the fellowship hall remains relatively unchanged, other than the removal of the pillars that would no longer be needed. What you're seeing in the gray areas are community outreach. So think free clinic. Think broadly about whatever it is, the kind of social ministries that this congregation can provide to this community, both now and then ongoing into the future, and growth there. There's also room for some high school and junior high youth ministry activities down here. And of course, 2 sets of bathrooms that are accessible with no steps. This plan gives us some storage, additional storage, obviously, that we don't have and desperately need now. And Adrian, let's go upstairs then. Okay. The orange and green rooms are, Sunday school classrooms and youth ministry activity rooms. Expands our ability to sort of separate kids by age and provide more useful space that is air conditioned, which currently it is not in our existing space. Again, this is all on one floor, accessible by stairs and elevator. The blue area that you're seeing there in the middle is the balcony. Yeah. Adrian, anything you want to add to that?
one of the real great things about this is everything's accessible. I mean, I have a high school student that's in a wheelchair right now, and all of our stuff is on the third floor. There's no elevator access, and so this gives us that accessibility for student ministry. That
Adrian, can you speak up, please?
sorry, you know what? Because I turned my volume way down, so I'm going to shout, and if I'm shouting too loud, you can tell me. But one of the great things about this, we have a high school student in a wheelchair that has trouble coming to events, or kids with mobility issues. Right now, there's the second and third floor where there's no access or there's no accessibility. And so one of the things that I'm excited about with this is that extra accessibility to our ministries and opening the doors to people that wouldn't be able to come otherwise.
Several questions come to mind. What's the seating capacity with the pews as shown? Are there
330.
How much?
330.
Oh, good.
Which I'll
And-
also point out, Adrian, maybe we can go back to the sanctuary floor plan, please. One of the main reasons that we're showing you a sanctuary that's been orientated 90 degrees is, we're expanding the sanctuary right to the left, to the rear of what you're looking at right now on the west wall. But we also get access to opening up those doors into the narthex to provide overflow seating for services, Christmas and Easter, and any time that we need the overflow. So we just thought it made more sense that way.
Two other questions, if I may. One, as I understand it, the current education wing is going to be maintained, except new floors will be put in. And I'm wondering whether the cost of putting in those new floors and rearranging all that versus just starting over completely, there must be some cost differential that the architect could tell us about. And the second question, quickly, many of these rooms look a little small. I'm wondering if there's a plan to have dividers that slide so that you could expand in some of the spaces, you could expand the space to open it up more. Just a question.
Two great questions. I'm going to invite John Willenkamp, our architect that his firm has designed and put this together, to talk a little bit about both of those questions. John? Need to unmute yourself, John, if you haven't already. Looks like John's having some technical difficulties. Well, then we'll jump in. John, just jump in when and if you can. This is the 8th rendition. Yeah. Say that again, Adrian. Yeah. So keeping the existing exterior walls, these.
Troy, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can, John. Go ahead, please.
Okay, great. Yeah. So the exterior walls, we feel we can at least save about $10 a square foot on the footprint. So we see an advantage of keeping those walls for multiple reasons. They're in good shape. Structurally, we can distribute the new load, with new columns and beams. But it'll just add to savings of the project and go elsewhere. The room and spaces, I guess some of them I know we talked, Adrian might want to answer that. We've looked at different areas where it made sense to do dividers and where it wouldn't. Those type of things can still evolve as the plan gets developed.
Thank you.
Good question, Zuba. A lot of thought went into, again, trying to waste as little as possible. Don't want to put, we want to put as little into this landfill as we can. But at the same time, it's difficult, right? It's a balancing act of trying to decide, okay, well, because you could really not get rid of anything and just try to update as best you can, but that leaves you with, some shortages and some of your other goals that you've got. So other questions about that?
So I'm going to jump in and
Please.
answer Leslie's question really quick. So by saving those walls, essentially what we're doing where Pastor Melissa's office are, and that actually gets raised up. Okay, so all those floors will be redone. The effort will be then to keep it all on 3 floors still. So the office level and the sanctuary and the narthex are still on 1 level. It just needs to get moved up. And so even when we were looking, I'm going to bring this up here. So if you notice the windows on where the current education wing, see that white space in between there? So that white space is essentially where the windows were, right? Because the windows all have to be adjusted to the new floors. And so the inside will still have to be completely redone in order to make space for everything that we're trying to do. And so, but we save it from going to the landfill. We're able to reuse a little bit more of the walls, and actually it expanded out. So our kids space actually was able to get a little more space by not putting in a new building.
Can I just say, when we did the video tour, it seemed like there were very, very long blank walls in those halls. And I don't know if there's some way to break it up. I know you sometimes can have some kind of visual relief in one way or another. I mean, windows into the classrooms or indentations in the wall or something. I just thought it felt in the digital tour like a really long cavernous hallway with no breaks whatsoever. So that's just a question I have.
John Wallenkamp, could you speak to that, please?
Yeah, I think there's still opportunity there to put windows in those hallways up high, so the exterior light floods into the interior. All that's still evolving, I guess. As Troy mentioned earlier, this is just a quick rendition to give you kind of a feel what's going on, and all the feedback and things like that would slowly build off the final plan.
Yeah.
This is Karen Truen, and if it's okay, I'm just going to jump in, Troy and Adrian. Couple of thoughts related to some questions about amount of space for social ministries, configuration of space, and just speaking to the conversations that we've had as the church council for the past 3 years, actually going on 5 years. We're really facing what I view as a transformational time in our ministry, and I really view it as a transformational time in the ELCA and the church overall. And I think COVID has really accelerated the need for that transformation. It's shown us some of the flexibility that we need to think about as a congregation, and as a congregation that's committed to service in Christ. And we have been looking at a long view of what is necessary for space and what is necessary to have the building as a tool for the ministry that we're looking to both continue and to create. Few notes on space available to social ministry. We've been thinking for a long time, what is our new food pantry and free clinic? What's the next phase of the community service resources that need to be available through First Lutheran? A lot of different things discussed, nothing really solidified, but need for resources in areas like mental health, childcare, affordable childcare, transitional housing. Not saying that any and all of those things would go in this space that we've trying to carve out for possibilities, but all of those things have been discussed as we continue to evaluate community needs. And we're really seeking not to build to what we're doing now, but build to what we could potentially do later. Also an opportunity to perhaps look at an income source for some of that space if it were leased out to a mission aligned organization or ministry. I guess the second thing that I would add is that we've been looking forward to what does First Lutheran's role as a leader in the Lutheran and in the Christian community in the Decorah area look like? We have 25 ELCA churches within the greater Decorah area, that is a model that is just not sustainable in the long term. There are opportunities to partner with Luther College. There are opportunities to partner with Wartburg Seminary in Dubuque. All of those things have great, rich possibilities of sharing resources, having a home base at First Lutheran, which was really the purpose of building First Lutheran in the first place. Historically, it was designed to be a cathedral and a central meeting spot for the ELCA in Northeast Iowa. So when we've considered all of these things and explored different ways that we could configure what a building project might look like, we've been really thinking about mission, and we've really been thinking about strategy. And so just a few thoughts related to that. The other thing that I wanted to mention has to do with the questions about what do we do with the windows, what do we do with the altar. Again, we haven't talked about aesthetics as Troy and Adrian have emphasized, and we do have to have a conversation about all of that. I grew up in a church, a very historic church in a very historic community. I grew up in Cedarburg, Wisconsin, which is just north of Milwaukee, and the entire community is on the National Register. And my home church is as well. It's an iconic central church in the middle of town. And we had a similar building project when I was in high school in the late 80s, where a fellowship area was added on. And there was great care taken in looking at what the historic assets we had within the church and how they might be reimagined, possibly reused, possibly reconfigured in the interest of creating space. So I don't want anybody to think that because what you're seeing on the screen means that we're going to put all the stained glass windows and the altar painting out on the curb with a sign that says free on it. That's not our intent. There are great possibilities, and John may kill me for saying this, but we could repurpose some of those stained glass windows in the exterior walls and capture some of the light in some of the other walls within the church. There are ways that we can do that to make the interior more visually interesting. There are great possibilities to use resources like that are iconic, that they're visual connections and historic connections for all of us. So great possibilities there, and we haven't even started those conversations. So I just want people to imagine and use your creativity and think about how we might be able to preserve what we love about First Lutheran and what those visual cues are that connect us to First Lutheran, but also try to perhaps reimagine how some of those might look in a new and different way. Thank you.
So there was a question posed about the altar. Again, as Karen was alluding to, the altar is not shown in this conceptual design simply because, look at all of these things that you're seeing on the screen have to be digitally sort of created. The altar is an intricate piece of work, and whether or not the team that is going to be talking about aesthetics and design of the sanctuary and the other parts of the building, I mean, we're going to leave that up to them to decide how all of those things fit in and where they fit in. By no means has it been a part of our task force's mission to decide those kinds of things, but just that the sanctuary is going to look different regardless in this particular plan, and that is simply for the purpose of making sure that that building is there for many years, tied together with steel. So
Can I ask a question, please?
please.
With the entrance off of the parking lot being to the west end of the church, facing the hill to the north, it does not appear to me by this drawing that there is covered space to pull up a car. Is that anything that's being considered or not?
Yeah,
it would seem that with the age of the population, it's going to get older. And yes, we will bring in younger members. However, the those of us that are getting that chronological turning age, we wish to have more of a covered entrance than what I see here.
So I'll jump in. So the cover that you see on the screen right now comes to the edge of the parking lot, but not over that. And John, and actually that, just so we're clear, that's actually going to have to drop down because if it rains currently the way it is, it won't actually block you from getting wet. So that is going to be brought down a little bit closer. But that's as comfortably far. Now the parking lot is set up, if you look, that you can pull up right next to it without it being completely covered. So it's still better than what we have without being perfect, if that makes sense.
Hey, John Wellenkamp, will you speak to, there's a question about the exterior feature connecting the sanctuary to the proposed new structure. I know we had looked at that a couple of times. Adrian, can you take us back one slide to take to the front of the church, please? Looks gray. So we had two different kinds of brick. And I think what I'm going to hear you say, John, is that it's when you put them right next to one another, there's a real contrast. So breaking it up with something like this was a part of this plan. But John Wellenkamp, could you speak to that?
That's correct. We kind of are doing a transition, not only for brick materials, but it's, in my mind, also to highlight and not trying to introduce something directly right up against what I'm calling the more historical icon as the church. So we want to create that feature that helps separate the materials, but also gives us that good, a transition from one to the next.
I still think we're missing an opportunity to consider having more of a covered entryway into the church. So that's my only comment.
And I think that's a great opportunity, something we will look at. We have two covered walkways, possibly the one you're seeing in the rendering here, extending it a little bit farther to the west. We did talk about in the earlier presentation, the main entrance on the west, lowering that, and then also extending it out so you have that opportunity to drop off. The challenge of doing a carport type thing, it's more opportunity that you lose more parking spaces, but definitely something as a group we can look at.
Oh, I think, we just need to consider there are various buildings that are accessed by multiple people in the community, such as the hospital. The hospital main entrance faces the same way that we're considering doing this. It's on the faces the north and the west. So, and they have a covered portico, whatever you want to call it, which is not total protection. However, it does provide enough that if you are getting somebody out that moves a little bit slower, and that's why you're leaving them out at the door, they would not be exposed to the elements as much if possible. So,
great.
Also, if I may jump in on that same similar point, that portico or the roof covering at the entrance looks awfully high, and just wondering if lowering that so it doesn't overwhelm the other background and add a little more protection, as Kevin mentioned. I think if you look at the other side, if you look at the south side, that entrance, you have the similar structure, but it's lower. And for me, aesthetically, I think it would look better, but that's just my opinion. I'll shut up now.
No, that's great opinion, Matt. Our design had looked at that after these were done, and I definitely would look at lowering that and that feature, bringing it down to more of a human scale on that side, and then we can get it out where maybe we're covering that drop-off lane, because that's actually a drive lane. So if someone would want to pull their car and let the passenger out, that roof covering would be right at that curb line right away.
And that's what I'm meaning. I'm not meaning being fully out into the parking lot or anything like that.
Yeah. Great, thank you.
I'd like to speak.
John, this is John speaking. I was wondering where the new addition that connects to the historic structure, what is covered up by that? Does it come up to the cover the current door there on the west side? In other words, what's the setback from the front of the church?
To the front of
current
this.
front.
There you go.
Yeah, Adrian. Essentially, you can see how we're
Yeah,
lining
there.
up the main link right up against the church is about 4 foot back from the
Yes.
corner. You'll see there, and then it steps out at the entry a little bit to line up with what I'll call the top landing of the steps, just before you enter the double doors. That'll be in the same line as those, and then it steps back again to the north.
Thank you.
There was a question, does the current elevator stay where it is? And absolutely not is the answer to that question. The elevator, again, so we see the new elevator down there on the lower left-hand side of your screen, but the existing elevator has run its course.
And Troy had mentioned earlier that the elevator's kind of placed so whether we want to use the lower level after hours, there's only access down and up. So it kind of helps you secure the building also.
Thanks, John.
I would like to speak to the question of elevation. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
The exterior maintains quite effectively the historic role of looking upward. I'm concerned about the flat ceiling in the sanctuary. Is it considerably above the seating area, or is it very low? It's unclear to me.
John, can you speak to that about the ceiling height in the sanctuary, please?
If you just give me 1 second, I'm going to go in the model. I don't have the exact height, but I can pull it up. So if we want to field another question as I'm looking, and then we can come back.
Well, I'm concerned about the traditional role of the symbol of height in churches.
The traditional role, well, you're saying the traditional role of height in the sanctuary, is that correct?
Height, yeah. Both in our language and in our vision, I think. Looking upwards. I mean, it's not a literal sort of thing, it's just traditionally, that's the reason why sanctuaries have high ceilings and vaulted ceilings.
Yeah, what our goal would be is to maximize that height. Right now, the sanctuary you have currently isn't as vaulted as the roof. You know, when you would look at the exterior of the building, you would feel it would have a greater pitch on the inside. I'm not able to pull, but if you recall, we have the balcony area. You still have height up there. So I'm thinking the ceiling's at least, I apologize because I can't pull it up, 22 feet high.
Mm-hmm.
But we can confirm these things.
But easily quite a bit different.
One of the problems with these computer-generated drive walkthroughs is that you get a distorted sense somewhat. The sanctuary, just looking at it, it looks like it's more narrow than it probably is. And I think the same is with the height. Unless you raise the roof, literally raise the roof, there's no way you're going to be able to accommodate a higher ceiling with this plan. I'll be quiet.
I have a question.
Yeah. Okay.
Looking at the church again from the west side, the new main entrance, I like that there's so much glass there because it, you know, provides natural light. But I wonder if we could consider having bird-friendly glass there, because that could really be a death trap for birds with that much light there, the window exposed. Question for the architect.
My audio.
Oh,
Okay.
those are always things that we will definitely look at and implement as needed. And I did confirm that where we have the ceiling right now is 22'5".
And John, again, if I'm correct in saying that's out of necessity versus preference, correct?
Correct, because it's a mix of the structural and right now the little bit of cathedral you have is a north-south gable, and as we flip the church, it's harder to look. But our goal is to create different planes and that within the main girders that can give you different geometries, that it's not a straight flat ceiling. I think that's why when you look at the model, there's some panel in there. Those are actually somewhat at a pitch in there, so it's not one straight flat ceiling across the point. And Troy, as you mentioned, all these pieces we aren't showing anything here that we're building tomorrow. These are just ideas to show you, to start the conversations of where we want to go.
So
Can I ask how big the elevator is? Is it a standard size elevator, or is it a larger elevator?
Yeah, the elevator would be not just your standard minimum. Our goal is where you could fit a gurney in the elevator for accessibility.
Okay,
So
and so
yeah.
there would be enough width there that if I was bringing somebody in and a wheelchair needed to be beside them, there would be enough to get in there, right?
Oh yeah, this is an 8-person elevator.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, yep.
Hey, Troy, this is John Anderson. Could I ask a question?
please, John.
I can't tell from the design, and I don't know the exact zoning code. But I was just wondering, it looked what the setback is. I believe this is R2, but I could be wrong about that. And that's like a 35-foot setback. And while the sanctuary is somewhat grandfathered in, obviously, and I haven't looked into this, so I'm not speaking on behalf of the city, but has there been any discussion about the setback requirements?
I'll let John tackle that.
Yeah, I know Adrian's done some brief reaching out to the city, and but the piece we'd be looking at here is similar to how some of the other facilities are east of your church, where we're looking at a 0 setback on the street side, and then it as you know it jogs in and out. Our goal is to make it look consistent with the existing facility. You know, whether it has to go through a conditional use with the city, we would help you through all those pieces.
Okay.
I served on the
I
Board
did.
of Adjustment, and I can tell you that the setback issue can be adjudicated if the neighbors agree, if it's matching other situations in the area, which I think is the case if you look at Church Row. That's just a comment.
Yeah, if you look at all the whether it's residential, everything to the east and to the west of you lines up with the existing church facade. Our goal is just to try to keep that same setback line in the new facility.
Would you have time for a short comment from me?
Please.
Yeah, this is Mark Mugley. I like that this whole south facade feels pedestrian welcoming, and I think that's really important for churches in general and for a building in an historic district which is largely residential and pedestrian.
The campaign consultant that we've been working with, Kairos Consultants, and Pastor Joe Crowther, has been intimately involved in our fundraising efforts. We've been, over the last 3 months or so, 4 months or so, visiting with potential lead and advanced donors. You know, to be perfectly honest, these plans have been met with various degrees of enthusiasm, from extreme to not so much. Change is hard, especially if you are grown accustomed over the years to looking at a specific sanctuary or a specific classroom or a specific fellowship hall. But I'm happy to say that the generosity, it's not surprising, but it's really been overwhelming. We're at just over $3.2 million in indications of financial interest, paid over a 3-year period of time, which gets us right to the point where we're knocking on the door to 70%, from about, 40 different families. So it's really been nothing short of amazing. We're come to you with this plan in a public way now to tell you this is something that not only our the task force, our friends at the ELCA, your council, has voted on and said it's time for us to show this to the rest of the congregation and get your feelings about it. And in December, we're going to ask that you put this to a vote. Between now and then, we're here to answer any and all questions. But we really feel as though this gives us the best way to really serve this congregation both now and in the future, with the pillars that you've told us are the most important to you.
Troy,
Yes.
can you put up the slide that has the sanctuary floor plan on and try and give me a visual as to where the organ is going to go?
Sure, you bet. So where the altar is today is where we would propose the organ go. And that's for 2 reasons. One, because we intend to shift the balcony from the south side of the sanctuary to the west side.
Okay.
So entering from the back of the sanctuary when you enter the sanctuary. But 2, the floor is where the organ, the original organ for First Lutheran Church was. If you've seen any of the old photos. And so for a couple of reasons, right? That space looks to fit the organ very, very nicely. It allows the organist to no longer have to run up and down the stairs to go back between the piano and the organ playing. And then it allows also an organist to conduct a choir. Those pews just to the right of the altar area, today's altar area, the future organ area would be a choir row.
Okay, got it.
Thanks for the question.
Thank you.
Can I,
You're very,
this is Carol Gilbertson again. I wonder if
Hi,
I
Carol.
can see the south-facing facade again.
the street, Broadway Street.
Broadway Street facade. No, from the front. There you go. Well, no, I want both. There you are. This is a really, I'm just brainstorming here. Was there any thought given to making that less of a sharp triangle in the entrance to the new part and making the arch more readily fit the kind of rounded Gothic windows on the old part? I don't know structurally if you can even do that. But you've got sort of rounded Gothic on the old part, and then on the new part you have a very sharp A-frame in the extending roof that comes out over the entryway. Just a thought, just a question.
Thanks for your question, Carol. John?
Yeah, those are all design features that are, we'll take note of and implement. I think it's a great opportunity to rethink those pieces and tie them all together. And once we get involved with the city too, those additional information like that will be built on too.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Yes, this is
Von Memphis. And I just have a question. I imagine you've been able to address in a great way air exchange in this new setting.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Air exchange.
Oh, John, yeah, air exchange. Thank you very much. John, can you touch on that, please?
Yeah, pretty much all the spaces would be looking at getting new mechanical systems. So definitely looking at air exchanges of all the new spaces, bathrooms, you know, we would implement all those, you know, to the current modern codes.
Roy,
Great question.
this is John.
Yeah, John.
Back to Carol's suggestion, which I thought was interesting. Perhaps you could take the design feature of the smaller window up in the steeple with the three, you know, above the arched window, and put that into this other feature on the new part, something like that. Just some design ideas that you could take from the older structure and integrate into the new.
Yeah, tying it together. Great suggestion.
Mm-hmm.
Tying it
I like
together.
that.
Well, folks, it's not supposed to be, you know, this is a final print, obviously, right? This is the, what, 7th or 8th, I guess the 8th rendition, and it's in flux. It's a dynamic look at what we're proposing. And so we'll look forward to bringing more information to you as it becomes available. In the meantime, if you can please, as I said before, talk amongst yourselves about this, pray about it. What do you see the future of First Lutheran Church being, and how does this help us? This is because, as we all know, the church is just a tool for the ministry that we have. And then how might you and your families be a part of the fundraising efforts, and what might that look like? Please reach out to Adrian or myself or anybody else on the task force with questions or concerns or comments. We've been super eager to get this to you all, and now really looking forward to hearing what you have to say. So thanks for your time and your input today.
Right, before we go, can I jump in just really fast, because I've just been
Sure, Pastor, yes.
Getting to watch and listen, and it's fun. I'm enjoying hearing the creativity and the openness and the intrigue around our Zoom room today, and just loving this being shown something new, and the excitement that I feel, and I'm really glad for that, because one of the things that you mentioned, Troy, and that we know, those of us who've the building committee and some of us on staff who've been able to watch this develop, and so these plans are, you know, we've seen the development to get to this point, and realizing that it is a shock to the system when you see them for the first time, because it is a lot that is new. And one of the things that I mentioned at our first one of these meetings in person at 10 o'clock today is I feel lucky and blessed to now have been around for long enough that I can say that I remember celebrating the 150th anniversary of the congregation with you all shortly after I got here. And I remember that in that celebration year, we gave thanks for and remembered and praised God for God's faithfulness to us in ministry for 150 years. And then I remember that the next year we called it our +1 year, and started to imagine what year 150 + 1 looked like, and what was the next year and the next 10, 15, 150 years of this congregation going to be. And so for me, what really excites me about these plans, what excites me about what came out of the MAP survey last summer, is that this is a congregation that is still excited to continue to move forward and grow in ministry. And because of that, we get to look at these plans for building, and we get to imagine the ministry possibilities into the future, and we get to imagine what sorts of wonderful things God has in store inside this building. And we get to do the really amazing work of figuring out how to take the first 154 years now of our ministries and our building, and honor that, and carry the best of it into the future, both from a design standpoint, I guess, but also just in our ministries together. So I am thrilled by these plans. I'm thrilled that you all get to see them now, and would invite you to continue to imagine and dream as you think about these plans now, and look at them again, and think about what's next for our congregation and the way that this building gets to be a really beautiful tool in all of that. So also Hildegard refuses to leave us alone, so you get a cat too.
Thanks, Pastor. Well, again, thank you all for your time and attention to this. We'll look forward to continuing the conversation. Good evening.
Perfect sense. I guess we're all leaving. There we go. Hold on a second. Oh, I guess everyone's leaving. Okay. No.